Make way for the butterfly koi of V4Mirai's 5th generation AURARAIN! My name's Serina Maiko, charmed, and welcome to what you've all been waiting for, a guide to the Omegaverse. Today, I will be taking you through everything that there is to know for complete beginners, so make sure to ask as many questions as you want. As the category says, this is technically educational, okay? This is a concept overview, which means I can show things for the purpose of education. So we are all going to be very mature, calm, and collected, right? Right? Gonna be on our best behavior today so Daddy YouTube doesn't get me. Technically, exactly. It is educational because you know what? There is information being shared. Now, before we get started, who here knows what the Omegaverse is? Thank you for continuing your SARMY training of 27 months. Oh my god. 1 pow, 2 pow, 3 pow, 4 pow, 5 pow, 6 pow, 7 pow, 8 pow, 9 pow, 10 pow, 11 pow, 12 pow, 13 pow, 30 pow, 40 pow, 50 pow, 50 pow, 18 pow, 19 pow, 20 pow, 21 pow, 22 pow, 23 pow, 24 pow, 25 pow, 26 pow, 27 pow, and one for good luck. Murko, thank you for 28 months! Omegaverse, yes! 1 pow, 2 pow, 3 pow, 4 pow, 5 pow, 6 pow, 7 pow, 8 pow, 9 pow, 10 pow, 11 pow, 12 pow, 13 pow, 14 pow, 50 pow, 50, 60 pow, 70 pow, 18 pow, 19 pow, 20 pow, 21 pow, 21 2 pow, 21 3 pow, 21 4 pow, 25 pow, 26 pow, 27 pow, 28 pow, and 1 for good luck. My gosh, it's been over 2 years, is it? Yeah, that's, oh my god, that's 2 years and 4 months. Oh my god, you guys are insane. She's alive. Hello, Puma. Hello. I am alive. I bet some of you probably thought I was gonna fall asleep, didn't you? Because I haven't slept since yesterday. Listen, or even the day before, actually. Okay. I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. I have been so wired lately. Maybe I think I've just been so overexcited for the Omegaverse to finally talk about one of my most diehard passions that I just couldn't sleep, you know? 2 days no sleep, not the first time. Don't worry. Everyone does it, and that is why I'm so excited. Also, actually, yeah, I'm gonna keep my hand here propped tonight. It looks very dainty, very demure. I got glasses, by the way, so now you know I'm certified to teach you about educational content. No, we don't. Anyways, I don't know. I'm kidding. Who told you that? Who told me what? We've all gone at least 2 days without sleeping. Or 2 nights, technically, I guess. Like 3 days, 2 nights without sleeping? No? Don't try to make me feel like don't try to make it look like I'm not normal, guys. I know I'm normal. Listen, you've never pulled all-nighters, not even just like start studying, but like just out of excitement. Girl, never. Never? I went 2 months before. Okay, that I do not believe you. You're telling me you went 2 months? I'm pretty sure after like a week you would start going insane, no? Was it the type of thing where you went 2 months without sleeping properly, but you were like passing out and like stuff like that? Girl, after 1 all-nighter, I was already dying. Normal? Okay. Okay, maybe I'm not that normal, but you know what? We're not here to be concerned over my sleeping habits. Like I said, I will try really hard to sleep tonight. I do have a lot of work I have to get done though, so you know what? Without further ado, let's just move on to the presentation. This is what we're all here for today. I asked you guys a question and nobody answered. Does anybody here know what the Omegaverse is? And wants to just tell me what you know about it before we get into this presentation, because I'm actually very proud of this presentation. I put a lot of work into it. It's a presentation that I actually initially made months ago just to teach my friends about the Omegaverse whenever we were in a call. Like, it wasn't even something I was making for stream, and then I was like, wait a minute, I'm doing a stream on the Omegaverse. I already have a presentation about the Omegaverse, so I just adjusted a few things, and now it is YouTube ready. I say very hesitantly. I am recording the stream, so worst case, if YouTube does attack me, you see, my main concern, because again, this is educational and there's nothing in there like graphic. We are going to be looking at diagrams of like the reproductive system, which is like 7th grade level, if even, biology. So should be okay, but Worst case scenario, I get another strike and I can't go live or upload for a week. That would suck. Best case scenario, YouTube understands that I am doing exactly what the stream is labeled as. Let me say it very clearly right now. The stream is labeled under the educational category of content overview, because this is a content overview of a subgenre of literature, which includes like biology and the reproductive system and everything like that. We talk about the social hierarchy and like going over different terms and examples. There's an activity for you guys too. This is an educational stream. I'm not just saying that to be like, ooh, ha, hee, hee, ha, ha, I'm dancing around the margins or whatever. This is legitimately what I would classify as educational content. It is not being exploited for sexual gratification, nor am I treating this lightly. I am very passionate and knowledgeable of this subject. So, YouTube, she is slowing. No, I am not. Don't say that. I am not. Please don't take our serotonin away from. Dude, that would suck. I don't even want to joke about it, but yes. As I said, maybe I'll put my coat back on just in case. I mean, it's not like you really see much. But you know what? I feel cooler with my cloak on. I feel more educated. So without further ado, let's get into the Omegaverse. As you can see, we have a lot of topics to cover. We're going to talk about the overview, which is just a general summary of what the Omegaverse is. And then I have a disclaimer. It's probably not what you guys are thinking it's going to be. Then we'll talk a little bit about the history. I say history very loosely because it's more about the earliest, most recognized, notable occurrences of Omegaverse, like the concept of Omegaverse appearing in literature, not necessarily like the very, very start of the Omegaverse, because, it's really difficult to date back to like an idea, like for the first person to have an idea, Then we'll talk about the reproductive system of alphas, betas, omegas, and then just the general reproductive anatomy. Then we'll go over the glossary, and then we have a lot to cover in additional info. It would not fit on the table of contents. So let's just jump right into it. Overview. Now I know what you guys are going to say. I don't care if you don't like Low Tide and Twilight or Love Remedy. I do care if you dislike Love Shuttle, because who the fuck dislikes Love Shuttle? However, if you are going to yell at me for having Low Tide and Twilight on there, or even Love Remedy, honestly, because a lot of people just really don't like the uke in that, but that's I'm getting ahead of myself there. That's not what we're here for. It is just an example of a popular Omegaverse manhwa. So, what is the Omegaverse? The Omegaverse is an alternative universe and genre of fiction, very loosely, based around the social hierarchy of wolves. Now, the reason why I said very loosely is because there's like a whole controversy about how, actually, Omegas are the ones.
Are you sure the stream is labeled educational? I don't see it, or is it an encoded thing? Also, I don't know what the Omegaverse is, so I'm interested.
Oh yes, it is definitely. I am in the educational category. I will be okay. I have to be okay. I'm begging to be okay. But yes, the reason why I said loosely based around the social hierarchy of wolves is because, once again, it is a very, I won't say really controversial, but definitely a common misconception about how wolf social hierarchy works is that they usually put omegas at the bottom and alphas at the top, where, at least from what I heard, I didn't really look that much into the wolf social hierarchy because I'm not a furry, I'm sorry. However, I'm pretty sure there was a whole thing where people were talking about like, it's actually omegas that are like at the top of society and the alphas are at the bottom, or blah, 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 or just like there's no social hierarchy and they're all just like even, equals, packs, whatever. That is not what the Omegaverse is. The Omegaverse is about social hierarchy, oppression, and, well, we'll get into the sex a little bit later. But yes, in this universe, people are split into 3 main classifications: alpha, beta, and omega. ABO for short, but be very careful when you type that, because I recently learned that if you type that in a different context, it means a slur in Australia. So we're going to be very good about this.
Underscore Serina
Thank you for the 5, and also thank you Monira for the 5 as well.
Serina Heart.
Sorry, I forgot to. I'm a little bit nervous, as you can probably imagine. You can imagine why. And the reason why, by the way, I say 3 main classifications is because this is including but not limited to, because we also have enigmas, we've got deltas, we've got gammas. There's a whole bunch of different kind of subsets and in-betweens, and there's also the whole thing with dominant and recessive classifications. There's a lot of layers to this. It's not just an excuse to make freaky porn. So These classifications, aka second genders, have alternative anatomy, making it possible for male omegas to get pregnant and for female alphas to impregnate others, as well as plenty of other fun power-ups, as I like to call them. Now, when I say power-ups, I'm not just talking about like physical power-ups. I'm talking about like plot devices and like world building, and like there's, however much you're thinking there is to the Omegaverse, there is so much more, because as it says in the name, it is an entire universe. I could do another presentation about Guideverse, although you guys probably don't know what that is, and that is okay, and that is why I will be doing a presentation on Guideverse in the future. But for now, I wanted to touch on this one because this is the most popular one. If you're wondering, yes, there are other fictional, like alternate, like what's it called? Like reoccurring alternate universes spread amongst multiple stories. There's Cakeverse, unfortunately. There's, like I said, Guideverse. There's Nameverse, I believe. I actually don't know all of the verses that much, but think of it as like an isekai. Yeah. Let's go with that. So, as mentioned, for the disclaimer, yes, one more time, I will give you the disclaimer that there are going to be scientific diagrams to go over, what's it called? There will be diagrams in later slides showing you guys how the inner workings of the reproductive anatomy works in this universe. But the main thing I really wanted to talk about for anyone that may have noticed or will notice anything that they consider to be an inconsistency or something that they were confused about because it was just different from one story to another, is that similar to the concept of vampires, the Omegaverse has core traits that remain the same across all stories, but allows authors to reinterpret / expand on the lore with unique variations depending on their world building. For example, I could say that, oh, in the Omegaverse, betas are the minority, but then there's a lot of, or the majority, and then you'll have some stories where it's like, actually, betas are the minority, and there's a lot more alphas and omegas. Or I can have another common thing is like, people are really back and forth about whether or not betas can smell pheromones or not. Again, like vampires or werewolves or elves or whatever other mythical creature, it really is more so about capturing the general vibe and atmosphere and like more our overarching story rather than having like strict rules for each one. Because again, it's fiction and we're having fun in fiction. Omega lol. Guys, we need to be serious. Lock in here. Now, I put this picture here. I'm not going to sit here and read all of it to you. I just thought that it was a nice panel from, I believe, a manga, because it's right to left. And if you wanted to pause, if for those of you who are watching the VOD, if you wanted to pause and go through and read everything on this, I just want to clarify, make sure you are able to see the text, right? Because if you need me to zoom in, I can do that. It sounds adaptive to what the writer desires. Desires. Exactly. It adapts to what the writer has intended for the story. So like I said, you might have a story where, for example, I'll get into this again. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. But when, in the case of dominant and recessive alphas or omegas, sometimes dominant omegas have traits that are like they'll say like, oh, it's because they have heightened dominant, like heightened omega features, which means that they're more submissive. And then other ones will say, oh, well, because they're a dominant omega, they're actually less submissive. And it's like, again, it really is just up to the author. And so I wanted to be transparent about that for if I say anything, you understand why it may differ from the stories that you have read before or what you have known from before. So everything that I'm going to be talking about in this stream, for the most part, again, just kind of covering the more overarching, like summarized plot of the universe and like the most common themes that you'll see, but there's not everything in here. Like I don't think there's a slide in here talking about how betas can manifest as omegas or alphas due to stress or just like the pheromones from around them. I also don't think there's any mention in here about, actually no, I kind of covered a lot of things. Yeah, I actually covered a lot of topics. When we get to the end, I will be taking questions and you guys can ask me whatever you want because like I said, I'm feeling pretty confident that I know a lot about this. I think the only thing that I can't say I know as much about is the history because again, it's really hard to date back a concept or idea to one specific history. But there is one commonly well-known, notable piece of literature that you will see in the next slide. But before we get to that, Once again, this is why you may see some concepts that are different or inconsistent between stories. The most effective way to learn about the Omegaverse is to read/consume more media involving the topic. So if you really want to know more about the Omegaverse and you feel like there's stuff that either I got wrong or I didn't cover here, I highly recommend, I'll have some examples at the end of this slideshow that you guys can look up on your own. Most of them are on Lezen. I think 2 of them are on Lezen, 2 of them are on Tappytoon, and one's on Tapas. I have all of the platforms where you can read all of these manhwas. They're mostly manhwas, I will say, because a lot of the BL, I haven't had really that many like opportunities to read a lot of BL manga, because most of the because I read like webcomics, so like most of the ones that are online are usually, at least from what I've seen, like webtoons, and then like Lezen, Tapas, Tappytoon, Boomtoon. There's a whole bunch of them. But again, getting ahead of myself. So let's move on to, oh no, history. I want to preface this by saying, I'm sorry. I want to preface this by saying, once again, I'm sorry that the origin of most things when it comes to fandom, I won't even say most, but the origin, you'd be surprised how many fandom things originated from Supernatural. Now, I don't know if any of you guys were Tumblr users back in the day, but there was this fandom called the Super Hulaks, and they were kind of the root of all evil. But you know what? They birthed a lot of concepts. They started a lot of trends, a lot of it's their culture, you know. Come on. So, as I mentioned before, we could trace back the earliest, like we could find traces of Omegaverse ideology in fiction as early as like the mid to late 1900s. I couldn't get a straight answer on what the general ballpark was, but the most recognized origin dates back to a Jensen X Jared Kink prompt, which is what this screenshot is if you're over here on the left. I didn't really bother reading this entire thing, so it could be saying the most vile stuff known to man. I will just say it right now. I do not ship Wincest. I am not a fan of Wincest. I do not enjoy Wincest. I am a Destiel girly, thick and through. But this does make Jensen Ackles the world's first recognized Omega in fiction. And if you ask like some people, I mean, I can't even say a lot of people, but if you were to ask people that are really well like versed with the Omegaverse, oh my god, bars, where it started, at least one person would definitely mention Wincest. So if you don't know what Wincest is, good for you. But it is from Supernatural, which is a TV show that was running from, I don't know how far back. I think it just recently completed with its 15th season. And it is also apparently leaving Netflix soon. So if you are watching it on Netflix, you better catch up because you're not going to be able to soon. But yeah, that was quick little history lesson, but that's honestly not what you guys are here for. So let's get into the more meat and potatoes of this presentation. Starting with the potatoes. Social hierarchy. You'll notice there's going to be a lot. It ended recently. Yeah. Win is literally in the word. How could it not be a good thing? Well, they are brothers. So, social hierarchy. You'll see that as I'm talking about the Omegaverse, at least to me, obviously everybody wants to interpret it and use it however they want, like however they see fit, whatever needs or like desires or like messages that they want to get across. It is entirely up to you. If you want to look at the Omegaverse as just being a sexual thing, you can look at it just being a sexual thing. I more so like, and then this is not me trying to be like, oh, moral high ground. I genuinely do not care. However you want to look at the Omegaverse. But for me personally, the most that I get out of the Omegaverse is looking more into the social hierarchy of everything and how the intersectionality of overlapping like gender oppression and then second gender oppression and then misogyny and like all of that kind of ties together. I think it's a very interestingly layered, complex, what's the word? Concept, which bears, oh my god, a lot of, I am really blanking today. Oh my gosh. It's a very layered, complex concept, which allows for a lot of different, not just tropes, but just like a whole bunch of different plot lines that you wouldn't necessarily get in in a piece that is set in the natural world. So, for the social hierarchy, while betas often make up the majority of the population, the order of power is as follows. So you have the alphas at the top. They hold the highest position in society, often coming from privileged families and pursuing careers of power. So they're going to be your rich CEOs, they're going to be your gang leaders, they're going to be your, like, your boss's boss type guy. Like it's kind of like an, oh, if you were born an alpha, you're basically born with a silver spoon in your mouth, or like you are like the good, like you're the lucky one, you're the lucky pull if it was a gotcha system with your parents. That's kind of how the alphas are in this society. And then the betas are generally seen as the common folk, or your average everyday person, as they do follow the reproductive system as the natural world. So like I said, in most stories they usually make up the majority of the population, not all of them. But then you have omegas, which are always ranked at the bottom, making them the most oppressed classification. Their second gender has the largest effect on their daily life, as they are often preyed upon and belittled by others. They have a harder time finding jobs or pursuing other opportunities due to this discrimination. So if you're reading if you're getting deep into Omegaverse stuff and you want to read a lot more, and like you just get around, get experience, get some titles under your belt. You probably noticed that, for example, Love is an Illusion, which I'll be talking about a little bit later. Love is an Illusion, I believe there was a scene where Haesung was struggling to find a job because a lot of jobs would just straight up have a sign that say no omegas allowed. And there's a bunch of different stories I've read that I'm kind of blanking on at the moment, where the omega will have to either like try to like use different scent blockers and stuff to hide that they're an omega so they can get hired for things, or like they would have to lie and say, oh, I'm a beta. For example, what is it? Kiss Me If You Can? Yes, Kiss Me If You Can is a manga about an omega who pretends to be a beta so that he can work as a personal bodyguard. So obviously, if they knew he was an omega, they wouldn't really take him seriously or trust in his strength to protect their alpha like target guy that they're watching. He's like an actor or something. I don't know. I'm not caught up. But yeah, there's so much lore I never knew about. It's what I'm saying. That's got so much to it. It's so interesting and it's so fun to talk about. But yeah, that is generally in a short summarized way of explaining the social hierarchy of the Omegaverse. Now, after this part, these are the slides where we're going to be going into the reproductive system. So if you are uncomfortable with seeing diagrams of the reproductive system, feel free to close your eyes, or if you want to just have the stream open like audio only, or if you want to just like cover it up with your hand, you do whatever you have to do. I do not want to make anyone uncomfortable. I did try to see how little I could show, but at that point, it's like if you're cutting off parts of a diagram, it kind of doesn't make that much sense. So we are all going to be very mature, because this is the type of diagram you would see in like a 7th grade health class and not get me demonetized, correct? Tell me you understand. Go on, nod your little heads, SARMY. The social dynamics are very domination focused. Yes, indeed. We are very mature. Okay. So, reproductive system of an alpha. Alphas are generally described as protective, possessive, and dominant. Both male and female alphas have the ability to impregnate female betas and all omegas. Female alphas cannot get pregnant, with the exception of enigmas, which I will be talking about a little bit later. But this is basically how the reproductive system works for a omega female. An alpha female. I know that's the one you guys are going to be more curious about. In most stories, or like Yuri Omegaverse, there is Yuri Omegaverse, by the way. In most stories, female alphas have like a retractable penis. Although sometimes they do kind of operate with like the futanari, with the futanari anatomy. But for the most part, it's usually retractable. And if you're wondering, oh, well, if they both have penises, what makes one a girl and what makes the one not? They still have boobs. Female alphas still have boobs. They still look like they still have feminine features and like they present as female. It's just like I said, it's a secondary gender. So it's more so based around their deeper anatomy and not so much their gender expression, if that makes sense. Like hyenas. Yeah, Puma would know a lot about that. And then we get into betas, which, as I said before, follows the same reproductive system as the natural world. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, actually, I'll get to when I get to the omega slide. So yeah, male and female betas follow the same anatomy as those in the natural world. In most stories, betas do not have strong pheromones, if any. So this is another one of those things, especially because people just don't write about betas as often. But this is another one of those things where it can kind of differ from story to story. Sometimes betas have a very, very light pheromone scent, just like a natural scent. Other times they have none. Sometimes they can smell alpha and omega pheromones. Other times they can't smell it. It really just kind of depends on the story. And I will say, when it comes to Omegaverse, even though not all of them explicitly teach you everything you need to know for the story, you kind of just pick up on these concepts and tropes from like context clues and like watching what happens to the characters. That's why I said the best way to learn about it is to go out and read about it. So in most stories, betas cannot feel or smell pheromones from alphas or omegas, nor do they experience heat or ret cycles. So even though the pheromone thing is kind of a could or couldn't, the thing that is almost always consistent, like more than 90% consistent, is the fact that betas do not experience heat or ret cycles. So when I say that they follow the anatomy of the natural world, that means that all of those superpowers that makes the like alphas and omegas different from us pretty much, they don't experience. They're not going into heat. They don't have to worry as much about like their second gender oppression, because even though people are like, oh, alphas are the best, they kind of look at betas as like, I guess you're okay, but they're not really looking down on you as a beta unless it's another alpha, or if you're in a relationship with an omega, which is again more contextual things that you could follow on with later. And what exactly are heat and ret cycles? Oh, I'm so glad you asked. We'll get to that after I finish talking about the reproductive system, because then we'll get to talk about vocabulary. So the next slide. Obviously, we have omega anatomy. You may have noticed that for the omega male reproductive system, their penis is just genetically smaller. That is a very consistent thing. That is a thing that they use in the Omegaverse to like as like one of the like quote unquote like traits of what makes an omega. They'll be like, oh yeah, you've got strong pheromones. You're shorter, or you're like skinny or whatever. Or you've got small genitals. You've got slit coming out. Like these all signs of an omega. Again, if you were to go read Love is an Illusion, you would see that in the first chapter. Betas are basically base human. Yes, betas follow the same anatomy as the natural world. They do not have any of the like special different things that you wouldn't see from like if you go to like a Barnes and Noble or something. Cloacal flap. Yes, indeed. So you may have noticed, this is a question I see asked a lot. How do omega men give birth? Now, I know a lot of people say, oh, it's different from story to story. However, at least for the Omegaverse, it is almost always a butt baby or C-section. Now, when I say butt baby, I do not mean that they are pooping the baby out of their rectum. It kind of works like a cloaca on the inside. So let me grab my cursor. You can see right here, they've got the cloacal flap. Basically what happens is when the omega man is either aroused or in heat or during intercourse or during childbirth or any other reason that they need to access their birth canal, this little like flap will flip open, which then closes off access to the rectal cavity. So they're not gonna poop themselves when they're giving birth or like during sex, or like it's just, and like slick is not coming out of your ass either. Like it is entirely coming from the uterus right here, the vaginal cavity. So that is how that is separated. They cannot both be open at the same time. That actually sounds really convenient, right? Doesn't it? But yeah, I do have another diagram on this next page to get a closer look to the omega male and alpha female anatomy. So let's, omegas are generally described as gentle, nurturing, and submissive. Now, I do want to say one more disclaimer that when I say they're generally described as, just like how gender expression and sex works like in the natural world, just because they're an omega does not mean that they will always be gentle, nurturing, and or submissive. There are definitely dominant omegas and there are definitely submissive alphas. And just like in the real world, everybody is different. It's just your second gender classification and the common traits of those, but not necessarily a hard lock on what an omega or an alpha is supposed to be. I've read stories where omegas were topping other omegas. I've read stories where omegas were topping alphas. I've read stories where betas were topping alphas. I've read stories where an omega was topping a beta. You really can just kind of, it's really just kind of up to the person. And again, that's why I think it's so interesting and so complex, because it kind of like doubles everything that it, like the concept of like misogyny, and then like well, sexism is kind of the same thing, but like homophobia, like transphobia, like all of those things, like it really just kind of takes it to the next level. And that's just from the labels, not even necessarily, we haven't even gotten into all of the other things, like their power-ups, as I said. So lastly, for the reproductive system, okay, I meant to cover that because I think it was a little bit too spicy for educational purposes. But anyway, yes, omega men can lactate. This is not consistent in all stories, because I've definitely read stories where the omega, like a male omega was pregnant and gave birth, but he couldn't lactate, so they had to only use formula. And then I've read other stories where he was lactating because, not even because he was pregnant, but just because he was having like a hormonal imbalance, and so the alpha had unimportant. But yes, omega men can lactate. That is true. Inside the hull of an omega man, there is a valve. So this is what I was talking about on the previous slide. You can see it again clearer here, as well as down here, which flaps open when they're aroused or during intercourse, allowing access to the uterus. When open, it blocks off the feces canal, but at rest, the valve is closed, allowing the rectum to operate normally. When an omega man ejaculates, their semen does not contain sperm, so they cannot impregnate others under any circumstance. An omega man cannot impregnate anybody. They are infertile in terms of giving. They can only be impregnated regardless of if they are having intercourse with a omega female or a beta female. They cannot impregnate anyone. Now, for the alpha female, as I said before, they often have retractable penises, but in some stories, they have something similar to Futanari anatomy, which there is a lot more slightly graphic images behind here. You guys can go look for that. Because if it's not common in the Omegaverse, I'm not putting it on there. Alpha women don't have wombs, so they cannot get pregnant. This is where things get a little confusing. And even I have to kind of... Again, it's fiction, all right? Because I know in terms of the whole, when the beta man becomes a beta omega, or an omega man, like how does he become fertile? Does he grow a womb? Blah, 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 blah. Does he grow a valve? Like in terms of the deeper inner works of anatomy with how alpha women can get impregnated, or just alphas in general, actually, because alpha men can also be impregnated by an enigma, which I had mentioned this before. An enigma is basically just a very, 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 very tiny percent of the population. It's so small that people don't even believe they exist, and in most stories they don't. But in the ones that they do, they usually don't believe they exist, or it's like a super, super rare, like once in a lifetime type thing that can get an alpha pregnant, which I'm gonna be so honest, you kind of just have to use your imagination a bit there to understand how exactly that works. But basically, with the power of love, they can change their anatomy to be more compatible with their reproductive needs. So, yeah, that's pretty much the only purpose of an enigma, by the way, is to impregnate alphas. So... the chosen one, indeed. Okay, so these people are like Mr. M. I don't know who that is, but yes. So, moving on to the glossary. Here is where we get to talk a bit, kind of touch a little bit on all of the more common terms you guys have probably haven't heard, and just kind of talk a bit more about like what life is like in the Omegaverse for like alphas, betas, omegas. So the first one, I had seen this question asked before. Heat is when an omega is at their most aroused and fertile state. This happens periodically, but can also be induced. What I mean by that is if an omega is like smelling the pheromones of an alpha in rut, or vice versa, or there's like a dominant alpha, or just like for whatever reason, they just get really, really aroused, or like they just take in a lot of pheromones, they can then be induced to go into heat, even if it is not their time of the cycle, which... as you can imagine, is very annoying. There's also for like recessive omegas or for like newly expressed omegas, they can have very irregular heat cycles, so they don't always know when they're going to go into heat. It's a very common trope that omegas in the Omegaverse are supposed to track their heat cycles so that they can kind of stay on top of that, because usually you're supposed to start taking your suppressants before the heat cycle actually starts, because if you start taking them when it starts, it's kind of too late. You know, it's kind of like a 40% effective efficiency type thing. But yeah, there's a little bit of that inequality there as well, because it is very, very uncommon for alphas to be expected to track their rut cycles. They can go into rut, which, as you can see here, rut is basically the same thing for for an alpha that it is for an omega. It's when they're at their most aroused and fertile state. This happens periodically, but can also be induced. So if an alpha is around an omega that's in heat, their pheromones can then trigger their heat, or ruts, more commonly known. And I bring up the inequality a little bit because, again, like, even though omegas will get a lot of shit and discrimination and scrutiny and disrespect for not knowing when their heat cycle is going to show up, even though in terms of like omega healthcare and suppressants is so much more expensive for omegas, but whatever, we're not even going to get into it. It's kind of like in, oh, well, what were you wearing situation in terms of how people expect omegas to mandate their bodily functions and everything, but then never really putting the blame on alphas when those unfortunate scenarios happen, which I don't want to get too into detail about it because you could probably imagine. But yeah, just a little bit more of that social hierarchy that I had mentioned. Even though both alphas and omegas experience pretty much a lot of the same things, alphas are just at the top of society because that is what the Omegaverse society decided on. So, slick. Now, you're probably wondering, how does one give birth to a baby through their booty hole, or the uke hole, as I like to call it, if it's not self-lubricating? Because, you know, when women give birth, like, or when women have intercourse, like, they're self-lubricating. Their inner walls or whatever produces, like, secretes like a fluid to reduce friction, which makes intercourse and childbirth and everything, like, you know, there's discharge or whatever, like a lot smoother. Well, since Omega men don't have vaginas specifically, they have a natural lubricant that is produced during heat or just general arousal, called slick, which is used to reduce the friction during intercourse and childbirth, etc. Talking about closing up, exactly, that's what it's all about, and that's why it's so complex, that's why it's so multifaceted, it has all these layers, because it has a way, everything except for how alphas get pregnant from enigmas, or how betas can re-express as an alpha, as an omega, like, or an alpha, whatever. Everything other than that can be explained in a way. I came back at a great time. Welcome back, Como. So that's why it's really interesting and why I like reading a lot, because even though I've read a lot of Omegaverse, still to this day, I'll be reading an Omegaverse manhwa or something, or a manga, doesn't even matter what, and I'll just be like, oh, that's new. And you're just looking at it like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm down with that. Let me take a sip of water really quickly. I completely forgot to mention, by the way, if there was anyone that looked away because of the reproductive diagrams, I can tell you there aren't any more in the rest of this slideshow. Like I said, like the whole reproductive and like the anatomy aspect of it is like, it's interesting and you definitely want to know what's going on so you're not confused when a guy pops a baby out of his ass. However, it is not the most interesting thing to me. I'm not particularly intrigued by anatomy, but it is still interesting. But anyways, oh my god. Hello? Hold on. Disregard. It was my sibling was outside my door. I think they muttered something to me, but I couldn't hear it. But whatever. Unimportant. Now, on to knots. Now, you guys have definitely heard me talk about nodding before. I joke about it all the time, but it's actually a very interesting thing. And I've seen knots happen, not even just in Omegaverse. You could see nodding in any like more like general werewolf stuff, like Paws and Claws, for example. Paws and Claws is a manhwa also on Lezen. Loved it. It's completed, by the way, with side stories. Check it out. But there is multiple instances of nodding in that story. So the Uke, who the MC, is a dog shifter, and then the Seme is a wolf shifter, and both of them are able to nod. I guess this is something that dogs are able to do. I don't particularly care for how dogs mate, but it is something that you'll see outside of the Omegaverse. So if you're reading werewolf fanfiction or whatever suits your fancy, don't be surprised when you see this come up. So, a knot is a swelling at the base of an alpha's penis that occurs during intercourse as they approach climax. It knots the penis inside, ensuring a higher chance of pregnancy. This is a natural thing that happens. For the most part, is out of their control. So a lot of times alphas just kind of have to like keep themselves from getting too excited. If you're wondering, yes, you do not need to be inside of someone to knot, because if you've ever read Define the Relationship, which is about two alphas, Carlisle, the bottom, actually does get so aroused that he just kind of knots, even though he's not penetrating anything. It also happens in Paws and Claws, where the bottom from that just gets so aroused that he knots without penetrating anything. So it's very interesting because it just kind of like swells up at the base. I will say, if you're reading Love is an Illusion, I don't know if this is an art error or if it's just different in this story, but in Love is an Illusion, the way that it's drawn with like the like anatomical like x-ray vision thing, it makes it look like the tip is swelling, which I'm gonna be honest is a bit scary. So don't be too afraid, but not impossible. So yeah, it basically just kind of like so that you can't pull out, and it's like a thing where it's like, oh, they can't pull out until they come, and it's supposed to, it does happen. It's more likely to happen close to their rut, or just like if there's a lot of pheromones, or again, if they just get overexcited, and it's usually very rude. Like it is definitely like, it goes against like proper sex etiquette to not inside anybody, honestly, without their prior consent or knowledge. It doesn't feel pleasant. I can only imagine. It's like if someone had like put a balloon inside of you and like blew it up, it would not be pleasant. So in terms of how this works into society, while there are those full of themselves alphas that are just like, well, I don't care, I can't control it, I'll knot you if I want, it is rude and wrong to do so without establishing a prior understanding of consent. So don't go knotting any omegas just because you can. Now, this next term you guys have definitely heard. It's called empreg, and that is when a cisgender man becomes pregnant. But the next one, fempreg, is when a cisgender woman impregnates another person. So when you think of fempreg versus empreg, you probably assume, oh, that's just like pregnancy, like getting a woman pregnant. No, fempreg is when a woman gets someone else pregnant. So this is when like a female alpha gets like any beta or omega pregnant. Wait, what? So remember how earlier I mentioned that alphas can impregnate others regardless of their like first like sex, like whether they're male or female? Yeah, that is why we have the term fempreg, because just like how men can be impregnated, women can impregnate others. How? So they basically, in a lot of stories, it's usually a retractable penis that kind of comes out, like grows from where the clitoris would be. Because if you actually think about, even for like the reproductive anatomy in the natural world, everybody's fetus is female until it kind of like grows into whether like its chromosomes or whatever, and then like your clitoris then like grows into your penis, I think, or something like that. I actually never had sex ed. This is the I know more about the reproductive system of the Omegaverse than I do about like the actual world. I'm not even gonna lie. However, unimportant. Do the eggs turn into sperm? So no, they don't have eggs because female alphas cannot be impregnated. They can only impregnate others. So they basically have a similar anatomy to how male alphas do, except they also just like visually, like they look like women. They have boobs. They still have like feminine features. Their gender expression is still like female, regardless of whether they're able to impregnate or be impregnated by others. Everything makes sense now, right? Isn't it so interesting? They are homologous structures during human development and are morphologically susceptible to hormonal balancing. Yeah, what supple old man said. So the last two things we have on here are not as common, but definitely terms you'll see more in like fan fiction, I think. I will say I don't really read fan fiction. I just don't really get into it as much as I do with original stories, which is why I read a lot more like manhwas, mangas, and like webtoons. Not really even webtoons. But something you'll definitely see more so in written Omegaverse is the term catching. And that is literally just when an Omega like successfully conceives a baby, especially because Omega males actually have a harder time getting pregnant than Omega females. So that is what catching is called. Sometimes you'll see he'll I don't know, the alpha will be like, I have to knot you to make sure you catch this baby or something. It's kind of like that. And then lastly, we have nesting, which I think is a very cute, wholesome term. It's one of my favorite terms. I almost said from the Omegaverse. You know what? Who's going to stop me? It's one of my favorite terms from the Omegaverse, and it basically means to create a safe, private space, often during pregnancy or heat, using soft, comfortable items with the scent of comfort and or their partner. So it's definitely more common for Omegas that are pregnant and like in their like mid to later stages of pregnancy to start nesting. But alphas can and do nest as well, and a lot of times they don't even realize they're doing it because Omegas are usually, you know, like I said, like society kind of expects Omegas to be the more nurturing one, like the more like quote unquote like motherly one. But alphas can definitely start nesting too, and it really ties back into, again, we'll talk about pheromones in a second, but pheromones are really, really important for alphas and Omegas, not just in terms of like going into heat or for like seducing people, but also during pregnancy. You'll notice that in a lot of stories, when an Omega is pregnant, it is very imperative that they have like a constant flow and ingestion of their alpha's pheromones to kind of keep their hormones and emotions and everything steady. So that's why in a lot of stories where they're either separated for a long time, or if like they're just like getting closer to term, and then they get like more nervous, they'll want to grab like their alpha's clothes and stuff like that because they're trying to get their pheromones. So it's not just about like, oh, finding soft things. Pheromones is very, very, very important, and we will get to that in a minute. Actually, we're gonna get to that right now. So with all of that out of the way, now we move on to additional facts. As you can see here, I found this little manhwa panel. I could not find what this was from. I saw it in like a Reddit thing, and I felt it was cute. It mentions the whole thing about glands, but yeah, besides male and female, there are 3 additional secondary genders in the world of alpha, beta, omega. Alphas and omegas are uncontrollably attracted to each other due to the pheromones they emit through their glands. So we're going to be talking about pheromones again very, very soon. But I want to note that while it says uncontrollably attracted, once again, just because your biology is trying to force you into a box, or society is trying to tell you who you are, doesn't necessarily mean that this is how alpha, betas, and omegas always act. So again, you want to keep that in mind. We do not want to be discriminatory, especially towards omegas. They definitely get the worst in terms of like stereotypes and assumptions because, like I said before, even though alphas have the same problems of going into ruts and then like having like their pheromones leak out and stuff like that, or even getting like taken advantage of, society just holds them to a different standard. Like if an alpha messes up, it's, oh, he can't handle it. He's just an alpha. Alphas will be alphas, you know? But if an omega messes up, then it's, oh my God, that slut, they should have known better. That's what I mean when I talk about the social hierarchy and injustice within the Omegaverse. And then another really, really interesting thing, once again, is talking about that intersectionality between being like an omega man versus like a beta female, because even though there is that second gender oppression, there is still very much regular gender oppression and like misogyny, and just like the world being like, oh, but she's a woman, she may be an alpha, but she's a woman. Like, what do you mean you want to get with this? Why are you with a beta? You're supposed to be with an omega. Why are you with an omega man? You're supposed to be with an omega woman. And like stuff like that, it literally just kind of adds like a second layer of oppression and bullshit to get on people for and stereotype people for. So that is, again, where I think it's very interesting. This society needs some serious civil and social justice movements ASAP. Well, I think our society also needs a lot of civil and social justice movements, but you know what? Again, just another interesting part of the Omegaverse. Now, something that you guys may not know that much about also, I love that I put both Love Shuttle and Scent and Sensibility here because I keep getting Doyun and Dobin's names mixed up when I was trying to find like pictures and stuff like that. Because I was searching Lee Dobin and I was like, why am I only getting Scent and Sensibility? And I was like, oh, that's because it's his name. But anyway, once again, I'm getting ahead of myself. So, dominant versus recessive traits in alphas and omegas. Let me drink some water real quick. Now, when you hear the term dominant alpha or submissive omega, you probably think, oh, that's just the role that they play in the bedroom. And sometimes when it is in that context, yes, you can have a dominant omega that's not necessarily genetically dominant, but just takes the lead in the bedroom and vice versa. However, what I'm referring to is more so in how it balances out their hormones and their genes and everything like that. So dominant alphas have stronger pheromones, meaning that if they were to go toe to toe with a regular alpha and like try to use their pheromones as like an intimidation tactic, because I also didn't mention your pheromones are not necessarily just a sexual thing or like a reproductive thing, but also a general kind of tell for your emotional state of being. So you can smell someone's pheromones and you could be able to tell, oh, that person's really sad right now, or you could smell like an alpha's pheromones that's like really angry because they're getting jealous that someone else is hitting on their omega. Like, your pheromones are not just going to come out when you're sexually aroused. They can also just come out for any intense emotion. So if you have a dominant alpha versus a recessive alpha and they both get in a heated argument, the dominant alpha's pheromones are going to be stronger, which will then trigger a chemical reaction in anyone else's brains, actually, which forces them to submit. Now, like with Scent and Sensibility, which I have right there, both of them actually, Dobin is a dominant omega, and then, forgive me, I forgot his name. I know his name. Shit, what is his name? Hold on. Scent and Sensibility. Characters. What was the... Oh, come on, Wiki. I don't know why the picture is Pearl Boy. Okay, here we go. Characters. They're not there. What's his name? God damn it. Does anyone remember what the alpha's name was from Scent and Sensibility? I could not remember his name because he's always calling him like sir because he's the boss. I need an Omegaverse political drama, please. Oh, you'd be surprised. Blah. You know, let me just open Lezen real quick. Hold on. I feel like it starts with a W, but I'm blanking. Oh my gosh. I hate that Lezen always logs me out. Like all the time. I know it's not Woojin. It's a different guy I'm thinking of. Okay, Scent. Oh, it's Moon Dobin. Wait, why did he come up when I searched Lee Dobin? Who the hell is Lee Dobin? Teo, that's his name. Okay, I was completely wrong about both of their names, but whatever. Who is Lee Dobin? Unimportant. But anyways, the one on the left is the dominant omega, and the one on the right is the dominant alpha. You'll see I also have this story on the page about pheromones, because this entire story is about the fact that he is a dominant alpha that cannot smell pheromones. And it's a whole problem because, you know, it's like a defect, and, you know, alphas are supposed to be perfect at the top of society. So there, he gets a pheromone therapist, which is our adorable dominant omega Moon Dobin over there, that sleeps with him to kind of like transfer pheromones. So there's a lot of things you'll see, actually. You'll see it in like reoccurring a little bit for like those stories that talk a little bit more about pheromones. Another example is Romance Not Romantic, where the main character is actually originally a beta that manifests as a recessive omega due to stress and just overwork and like excessive drinking and not getting enough sleep and stuff like that. So once again, a very interesting topic. But basically why I bring it up is because the whole thing is about trying to get him to like smell the pheromones. He doesn't know that it's Dobin. That's his pheromone sex therapist, and it's fun, it's cute, the art is pretty. I would definitely recommend it. You'll see it later on in the slides. But yeah, dominant alphas have stronger pheromones, recessive alphas have weaker pheromones. If a dominant alpha and a recessive alpha got into an argument, the dominant alpha's pheromones would overpower the recessive alpha's pheromones, and honestly anybody's, unless it's like an enigma or something. So that is also kind of like it's like a size contest almost for alphas. Like even if they don't have dominant or recessive alphas, if they're just two like standard typical alphas in an argument, they're just like they'll use their pheromones to kind of like try to intimidate other people. And like you also see in other stories that alphas will sometimes use their pheromones, particularly on omegas, to try to get them to submit to them. And it is very much, it's a lot of like power dynamics and everything like that. It's like superpowers. Exactly. And then on the opposite side, we have dominant omegas, which have stronger pheromones, but also stronger fertility, because recessive omegas are usually kind of seen as like even less than regular omegas, because they're like, oh wow, recessive omegas have every flaw of regular omegas, and they can't even give birth. What's the point of recessive omegas? Why were they even born? Yeah, that's the type of shit that recessive omegas would hear in the Omegaverse. And again, why there's so many layers to the society in the like social hierarchy in the Omegaverse. But like I said, I haven't even talked about like deltas and gammas, which honestly I don't think it's even that common anyway. I think terms like dominant alpha, recessive alpha, dominant omega, recessive omega are much more common these days, at least from what I've read. So, yeah, I wouldn't even really concern yourself with delta and gamma unless you're reading a lot of fan fiction on like Wattpad or whatever, which I do not personally have experience with. So, I cannot help you there. But now that I have taught you about dominant and recessive traits in alphas and omegas, I want to say we have a activity. So, going across the top, I've got the four classifications. You've got dominant alpha, recessive alpha, dominant omega, and recessive omega. And you guys are going to rearrange them in the correct order, because all of these are all scrambled right now. So, first things first, starting from left to right. If you've read the stories, by the way, do not answer. I want to see what people who have not read the stories will guess. From left to right, let's start with Lee Cho-won. Do we think that Lee Cho-won is a dominant alpha, a recessive alpha, a dominant omega, or a recessive omega? Go ahead and type your answer, because I'm a little bit too lazy. Actually, I'll just start a poll. No, I'm too lazy to do a poll. Just go ahead, type your answer, and I will do whatever I see the most of. If you want to like shorthand it to just like DA, DRA, DO, RO, feel free to do that. Recessive omega. Yeah, so recessive omegas, like I said before, they're omegas that just have weaker pheromones and they're less fertile. So, and they also just have like less visual omega traits. Because like I know I said that it was separate from their gender expression, but there are still some visual tells of like who is an alpha, who's an omega, like not just from their pheromones. Oh.
Question. How common are Omegaverse love triangles? Guess who's gone, be in the chair, is the joke I was most proud of when rewriting Under the Sea.
How common are Omegaverse love triangles? Oh, very common. There's a lot of stories where two alphas are fighting over the same omega, and they're usually, even if it's not like a true love triangle, there's almost always some omega guy that's in the way. But let's see, what is our guess for Lee Cho-won? Recessive omega, dominant omega, dominant omega, dominant omega, recessive omega. Okay, I'm seeing more dominant omega. I'm guessing recessive omega, maybe dominant omega. Okay, so are we good with dominant omega as our final answer? Also on the microphone, thank you for the 5. Dun, 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 dun. And locked in. We are moving. That's the wrong thing. Oopsies. We are gonna move Lee Cho-won to the, you guys said dominant omega, and we'll move Jinha. All right, next one. Seo Jinha. Do we think that Seo Jinha is a dominant alpha, a recessive alpha, or a recessive omega? Go ahead, type your answers in the chat, and I will just pick whatever I see the most of. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, I guess you don't need Jeopardy music. I already have BGM. Whatever. Whatever. I'm gonna take a slow sip of water while you guys do this. Recessive alpha, recessive alpha, recessive alpha. Oh, a lot of people are saying recessive alpha. All right, recessive alpha by a landslide. So then that leaves us with Kim Do-hyun. Do we think, because then the last one would be Woo Ju-hyuk. So whatever you guys don't vote for Kim Do-hyun is what you guys are going to say for Woo Ju-hyuk. So do we think that Kim Do-hyun is a dominant alpha or a recessive omega? Do we think he's a dominant alpha or a recessive omega? Go ahead. DA for dominant alpha and RO for recessive omega. Kim is definitely recessive omega. Okay. RO, recessive omega. RO, okay, okay. We're seeing a lot of recessive omegas. One more answer. All right, recessive omega it is, which would make Woo Ju-hyuk our dominant alpha. Now, it is time to grade your work. Let me go ahead and get you guys a little check mark for all of the ones you got right. Oh, wait, where is it? Here we go. So, correct. Lee Choan is a dominant omega. Everything else is wrong. Sorry to have to break it to you guys. But before I rearrange this to show you the correct classifications, does anyone want to take a guess at... Does anyone want to try to guess again to see what they got wrong? Rigged? How is it rigged? How is it rigged? Alright, recessive alpha by default of being the only one who picked recessive omega last time. Woo is a recessive alpha? Correct! Woo Ju-hyuk is a recessive alpha. And then Seo Jinha is actually our recessive omega. Kim Do-hyun is our dominant alpha from Alpha Trauma on Tapas. So these are the correct classifications. I was talking about this a little bit before for romance, not romantic. That is where this guy is from. So Seo Jinha, this guy right here, was originally a beta from his first manifestation and classification, who then remanifested as a recessive omega due to stress, overwork, lack of sleep, too much drinking, and just like pretty much just not really taking care of his body. In terms of the more scientific backing behind that, I don't know. But yeah, that's why he's recessive omega. Like I said, he's less likely to get pregnant. I don't think he's even fertile at all, actually. I think it might be a thing where he's just not able to get pregnant. Not gonna lie, Gina looks like an alpha. Does he? Is it? I think it's this pic. I think it's this panel. I feel like he looks so omega to me, but I've also seen him with like... Stop. I will say, I didn't expect you guys to get Do-hyun because I was quizzing Paige on this earlier, and she also wanted to put... She was like... Oh, when I said, who do you think is a dominant alpha? She was like, well, it's not going to be Do-hyun. And I was like, okay. She was like, it'd be so funny if he was a dominant alpha. And I was like, yeah, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? But you know what, guys? You had a good attempt, and that's what matters. Moving on. Marking. You thought it was over. So, marking, also known as bonding, imprinting, mating, claiming, whatever you want to call it. Basically, this is just how an alpha lays their claim on a person, or an omega can also mark an alpha. In some stories, this is just a like visually aesthetic thing. In other stories, it has a much deeper chemical reaction. So right here, I have, what was this? Sweet sugar, I think. Where you can see he's telling him, he's like, oh, I imprinted on you. Sorry, this is actually a spoiler. Just I realize this is a bit of a spoiler, so I'm not gonna tell you what this is from. But he's talking to him about how he imprinted on him, and that's why like he will literally die if they are separated for too long. It's the same with Love is an Illusion, where they accidentally bond. I'm sorry. Listen, in my defense, it's not that good. The art style changes after season 2. It's not worth it. There's other stories. There's better stories. But yeah, as you can see It's kind of like a forever bond that you're forming with another person. And you can see there's that little graphic here that says no bonding before marriage. There's also stories like in December where an alpha will try to like force a bond over an omega that they get particularly possessive over, because that is another common trait of alphas, especially those that are on the more dominant side. And it is very much like, again, with nodding. Actually, I would say this is significantly more invasive and rude to do to somebody without their prior consent, because this is literally marking somebody for life. You are claiming them for life. They cannot leave you. If you were to bond with someone after marriage and then divorce, you would not be able to leave that person because your body would be dependent on their pheromones and vice versa. You will die without each other. It is very intense. It is very, very serious. And it is a very fucked up thing to do to somebody. I'm looking at you, all you dominant alphas out there that don't have a care in the world. It is a very fucked up thing to do to somebody without really, really properly talking about it first. So, yeah, that is basically bonding, marking. It's usually in the form of a bite. It's typically on the neck, although sometimes in other stories, the bite could be anywhere. Sometimes the bite leaves like a permanent scar so that people can see that they're bonded or marked. Other times it just kind of fades away like any other wound. And the other thing that's really consistent to talk about in terms of bonding in stories is it's actually advised for omegas that have unstable pheromones to consider bonding, because once you're bonded to someone, then you don't really have to like worry about going into heat as frequently, because your body is thinking, okay, we've kind of secured the bag. We don't need to trigger our heat. We don't need to have super strong pheromones to bring in an alpha, because we already have one. I'm going to a power system ripe for abuse. Exactly. It's terrible. And this is why I will be having my anti-alpha. Stop. Next thing, here it is again, scent and sensibility. The cover art didn't have the title on it, so I just put the Canva thing out for this. But pheromones, I was gonna have a little diagram to talk about where the scent glands are for pheromones, but it's pretty similar to where they are in like your just like regular natural like world body. Obviously you sweat from kind of like your neck and your underarms, like in your like more like crevices and stuff like that, and that is where they produce their scent. They have scent glands. Sometimes you can feel them and they're very sensitive if some people will like bite or nibble on them. Other times they're literally just there to give off the scent. But in terms of pheromones, like I said, I talked about scent glands. Emotional influence. This is what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about how you can kind of get a read on a person's kind of like general, like if they are experiencing an intense, like overwhelming emotional influence, you can kind of get a feel for what they're feeling based off of their pheromones. So you can smell someone's pheromones and think, oh my God, someone just went into heat. Or if you see two alphas in an argument, you could smell their pheromones and you're like, oh, this is really uncomfortable. The air just got all heavy now. That is what I mean by emotional influence. Pheromones are not just for like reproductive purposes. There's also something called a pheromone shower, which is basically when an alpha just douses somebody in their pheromones. It doesn't have to be an omega, because if any of you guys have ever read Honey Trouble, they get in a whole argument about that, because the main character in Honey Trouble is actually a beta, which I won't spoil again. I did kind of fuck up a little bit by spoiling Sweet Without Sugar. I'm sorry. There shouldn't be any more spoilers in here. But in Honey Trouble, I won't say much about Wooju, but there is a part where they get in an argument because the alpha gives him a pheromone shower, and because he's a beta, he can't even smell it. So he has no idea that he smells like a pheromone shower, and everyone around him is just like, oh wow, how tacky, like announce to the whole world that you just finished having sex with someone. Oh my gosh, your partner must be so possessive, so dominant, so clingy. That is basically how pheromone showers work. And then lastly, we have pheromone perfume, which I'll actually talk a little bit more when we start talking about suppressants. So I'm gonna skip over that for now and jump to suppressants, actually. Oh my God, are these not in order for me? And don't worry guys, we're almost at the end. The end is in sight. Suppressants. Now, you've probably heard people joke about heat suppressants in the past or whatever, or just like in passing with now that the Omegaverse is going a bit more mainstream. But as you can see from this image over here, suppressants can come in many different ingestion, I guess, like in many different methods of ingestion. So you can take them orally, you can take them like with like an actual like needle injection. You can see there's pills, there's dissolvables, you can put in like water and stuff like that. And basically when it comes to heat and rut suppressants, as I said before, these are medications that you typically want to be taking a few days leading up to your heat or rut, so kind of numb the feeling. Because I will say, even though it sounds fun to be super horny and sensitive, a lot of heats are portrayed to be very, very painful. Like it's like an uncontrollably, like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like a literal physical heat that you feel burning up inside of you, and it's like your blood, your veins are boiling, your skin is on fire, you're just uncomfortable, you're clammy, you're feeling like hormonally congested, and just like you're out of control, you start blacking out, you can get dizzy, you get dehydrated. Like it's kind of like a lot of heat symptoms are aside from the arousal, ovulation, a lot of heat symptoms aside from the arousal are described as something similar to flu symptoms. So not a fun time. And again, especially when Omegas go into heat, this is a very vulnerable time for them, not just because it fucking hurts, but because we have these asshole alphas that'll try to take advantage of them. But again, besides the point. So that's what heat suppressants and rut suppressants are for, to kind of help mitigate and mandate those symptoms and like keep your like pheromones under control, so that you're not like triggering other people's like pheromones and stuff like that. But we also have scent blocking perfume, which if you see here in the Love is an Illusion panel, you can see there's a little alpha symbol on what is very clearly an Omega it's perfume bottle. And basically it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a perfume that's supposed to block your pheromones, because you can in a lot of stories tell the difference between an alpha's pheromones and an omega's pheromones. So if you have an omega that's pretending to be a beta and they look very clearly like an omega but they say they're a beta, and then you smell their omega pheromones, kind of outs them, and vice versa. So a lot of times they'll be using either a scent blocking perfume, and then in the opposite side you have beta, like female betas that want to smell like omegas, because female omegas are a lot more desirable in these stories than male omegas, because they're just like, well, they're gorgeous or whatever. But there are those female betas, like especially if they're in a relationship with an alpha and they want to kind of like be more omega like for their alpha, will buy for like a pheromone, not a pheromone suppressant, but like a scent blocking perfume, or like an alpha, like a omega pheromone perfume, to kind of like fake it in a way. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. I won't bore you too much with the details of that. And then almost last but not least, we have our reproductive compatibility. So here we go again with the enigmas. As you can see, enigma is the alpha of alphas. It is very, very, very small on the little triangle of society, and then betas make up once again the majority of the population, leaving omegas in the minority. So yeah, enigma can dominate every gender, alphas included, can impregnate every gender, alphas included, is believed to be a myth because of their rarity, the ultimate gender, the super gender, if you will. Now alphas, as I said before, are outstanding individuals with high status in society. They possess beauty, intelligence, and strong in maintaining the breeds, cannot get pregnant unless affected by enigma, yada yada yada. Beta, normal people. And then omegas, as you can see down there, it says male omega is more difficult to get pregnant than a female omega. So that is in any context, really. That is why especially if you're a recessive male omega, you are like the bottom of society for the most part. Which sucks. But yeah, you can see over there I've got a little chart. Enigmas are most compatible with alphas, and then like alphas are most compatible with omegas, regardless of whether they're male or female. And then in terms of everything below that, alpha male with a beta female is more compatible than a beta male with a beta female, which is even more compatible than a beta male with an omega female. So like I said before, beta males cannot, actually wait, that's supposed to say male, I believe. Hold on. Actually, you know what? I don't even think a beta male can... Yeah, beta males can't get omega males pregnant, which again, I know it is a little confusing, but it has to do with their pheromones as well. So again, I reference Love is an Illusion a lot because it just happens to cover a lot of common tropes. But in Love is an Illusion, there is a scene where Haesung, the main character, Omega, is going into heat, but he had already... was separated from Dojin, I'll say, without spoiling too much. And so their beta friend is like trying to help him, but because he's a beta, he doesn't have any pheromones, so it's not... That is the other thing with heats, is it's not just an, oh, you need to get off to calm it. It's like you need an alpha's pheromones, or like you need an omega's pheromones to kind of help get you through it. Because there was another one, actually, I think it was the side couple from Love is an Illusion with Lee Choan, actually, the dominant Omega, where he went into heat, and he ends up with a little bit of a spoiler, but whatever. I'm sorry. He ends up with a beta male, and there's like a whole thing where they kind of have like a little bit of a heart-to-heart where he's like, oh, I want to try to help you through your heat, and he's like, I don't think that's a good idea, and he's like, oh, believe in me, and they have sex a lot, and his heat does not subside, so he has to then go get his medication to help get him through it instead. So it is yeah, compatibility, but not impossible. And then last but not least, we have examples of some stories that I would recommend specifically to learn about the Omegaverse. I cannot promise you that these stories are good, except December. December is a work of art. However, all of these stories... You know what's funny? Actually, I think December explains the Omegaverse probably the least out of all of them. But I don't care. I'm biased, and this is my presentation, so December is going to be there in the examples. But if you actually want to learn more about the Omegaverse, I think in order of most to least helpful, or I guess like info dumpy, would probably be... I want to say the origin of species. I mean, both the origin of species and how to snag an alpha, both on the own Tappy Tune, by the way, they both start with like a quick little info dump of how the Omegaverse works. Whereas Love is an Illusion is more so you're learning from the character's actions and scenarios and tropes and things that happen to them. So if you want to learn it more so from like through context and just like having it be, I do think Love is an Illusion is a very good starter Omegaverse, especially if you don't know anything about it and you just want to learn about it and like through a story. Do I think they're a good couple? Fuck no. Dojin sucks. Husband of fuck from hell. I'm sorry. Literally everything that is wrong with alphas these days. But oh my god, I hate this man. Don't even get me started on Love is an Illusion Superstar. Because why are you still talking to his mother? Anyway, sorry, I got a bit ahead of myself there. But yeah, Love is an Illusion. It doesn't have the best reputation because, once again, people don't like their relationship. He's a piece of shit. He baby traps him pretty much. Everyone gives Haesung so much shit for being... Okay, anyway, moving on. December is actually about a recessive Omega, and he talks... It goes into, like, the deeper, like, oppressive, like... Sorry. It goes into... You'll see a lot more about how, recessive male Omegas are treated specifically because they cannot get pregnant. So in December, it's not just that they're less fertile. If you're a recessive Omega, you cannot get pregnant. So society treats you like you're essentially broken, and or your only purpose is to have sex with. That is how recessive Omegas are treated in December. It's actually a really sweet story, I would say. It's more of a drama. It's not really as like comedic as some of these other examples are. I say with the origin of species. But yeah, definitely my favorite on here out of the lineup. Although romance, not romantic, I did really like this one. I think it was really fun. I love enemies to lovers so freaking much. And it's actually December and romance not romantic have a similar premise, because in December the main character, the guy right here, the Omega, is actually the reason for this guy, the Alpha's like manifestation happening. And then the opposite happens in romance not romantic. So remember how before I was telling you before that Gina was a beta that had then manifested as an Omega due to stress and overwork and drinking, blah blah blah. He then has a thing where, because he goes into heat for the first time around the Alpha, I forgot his name, sorry. He then can only really take in his pheromones. So they have to like, it's another like very pheromone heavy one where they're like exchanging pheromones to help stabilize and blah, blah, blah. It makes more sense when you read it. And then we have the origin of species, which honestly, I haven't finished. I haven't finished either of these. But again, at the very beginning, it does just have like a long blurb of text explaining the Omegaverse. So if you want more so that, we've got the origin of species and how to snag an alpha. And I believe that is the... I forgot. I forgot this was... Okay, I forgot. Listen! Don't Sari me! Do not Sari me! Sari, who's this? I definitely had this to skip this slide, but whatever. There's literally no information on this slide. It's just an appreciation post for Kim EUIHYUN. This is the Omega from Low Tide and Twilight. And I'm gonna say it again. I don't care if you don't like Low Tide and Twilight. I don't care. I don't even care if you don't like Taeju. You can hate him all you want. But Kim EUIHYUN is my Omega. You will never raise a negative tongue towards this man. No, you will not. You will not, or you will die. I will curse your bloodline. Your lineage ends with you. Do not say anything bad about Kim EUIHYUN. This is our generational Omega. No one tops him except
This
his
is what
husband.
happens when the intrusive thoughts make it into the slideshow.
Hell yeah, thank you. You can say whatever you want about Low Tide and Twilight. I don't care. But you cannot say anything bad about Kim EUIHYUN. He is doing his best. He has always been doing his best. He is a strong, independent, amazing Omega. Everything that Omegas stand for. And I love him so much. He really goes against the stereotypes of what Omegas are supposed to be like. He never backs down. God, my heart. This is my baby. This is my Shayla right here. I don't care if he's 27 or 28 actually. This is my baby. Amen. Exactly. Amen. All hail Kim. Thank you. That is the actual end of the slideshow, I think. Yes. Okay. I thought that would be like an end thing when I clicked the last one, but I guess not. So I'm just gonna, yeah. Thank you guys for coming today to listen to me yap about the Omegaverse. I hope that you learned something. I know there's a lot of information that I dumped on you. You do not need to remember everything. And if you want to come back to the stream at a later date to recap on anything, please feel free to do so. I love teaching people about this. Like I said, there's a lot of different topics to it and like layers and stuff that I just didn't really get to cover. But I need a shower, a pheromone shower. But You'll learn about it once I like I said, like you'll learn about it the more you read of the Omegaverse and the more you see. And now you guys will see me talking about all these terms and you understand it, so it makes it even worse. Now, actually, you know what? I'm just gonna keep EUIHYUN on the screen while we do questions. In our final moments, do we have any questions on the Omegaverse? Question: how does Sari's scent smell like? All right. First of all, I probably smell majestic. You know, my mom hugged me the other day and she was like, "You smell so nice." And I was like, "Really? I'm on my period right now." So you know what? I don't know what my pheromones smell like, because you can't really smell your own pheromones unless you're Jinho. And then he was just like, "What is that? Who's peeling oranges?" And the doctor's like, "That's your pheromones." He's like, "I smell like oranges." Can an Enigma impregnate an Enigma? No. Not that I've seen. Wouldn't really make the most sense, huh? Maybe they can. I mean, Enigmas can impregnate anything. So who's they say they can't impregnate each other? I will say Enigma stories are pretty rare. They're usually a side couple, if anything. So you'll see like oh my god, they're both alphas. And it'd be like, actually, one of them manifested as an Enigma. Or in Define the Relationship, I think his name was Nick, which was Carlisle's brother's husband, was, I think, originally a beta that... I don't actually know if he was originally a beta or an Omega, but he did re-manifest into an Omega, which... a whole new thing. You guys should read Define the Relationship, by the way. It is super cute. I wouldn't necessarily say... The only reason I didn't put it in the examples is it's because it's not necessarily a story that'll teach you about the Omegaverse, but... It is completed, and it's very romantic and dramatic, and I love every second of it. Is the dom recessive thing a hard line, or is it a scale? Like, can a dominant alpha overpower another dominant alpha, or do they just equal out? It's definitely more like a scale. So if you have like 2 dominant alphas, everybody else will just be uncomfortable, but it wouldn't be impossible for one to dominate the other. It's more so just like think of it like a score multiplier, you know? So recessive traits would have like a negative score multiplier, and then dominant traits would have a positive score multiplier. And then from there, it really just comes down to how high or low your score multiplier is in terms of how society will treat you. Will this information be on the next test? Well, that would spoil the next test, wouldn't it, if I told you? What is the definitive ABO comic? Ooh. Wait, is that a title or something? Or are you asking me to like name like the most notable Omegaverse series? Because I think if you were to Google Omegaverse, probably the first thing you would see is Love is an Illusion. I think that's what most people start with. I didn't start with it. I actually only read it because of how popular it is. Same with why I'm reading Jinx. And I have to say, even though it is generally disliked, I didn't hate it. I did hate Dojin, but I liked Haesung. I feel like a lot of people disliked Haesung in the beginning. I think people are more understanding now with Love is an Illusion Superstar, which is the sequel series following their son. Let me see. So if I search Omegaverse, what's the first thing that comes up? Okay. Oh, Tadayama Okaeri. Oh, you know what? The Megami and Sugumi thing, that manga, that makes sense. That was pretty popular. Oh yeah, there it is. Little Time in Twilight. Oh my god, wait! I forgot when the Yakuza falls in love is an Omegaverse. How did I forget that? Oh my gosh. Wait, no it's not. No it's not. Why were they there? What? That was about the kid that, like, the Yakuza's kid mistakes the Uke for his mother or some shit. But it's definitely not Mpreg. I don't know why this is here with, what is the Omegaverse? But anyway. This is honestly a lot more information and deeper than I expected. I'm going to have to watch the VOD again to make sure I got everything. But this was a very impressive presentation. Thank you! I told you guys I'm passionate. I'm not just speaking out of my Uke hole. Megami to Tsugumi. Tsugumi is so popular. I actually haven't read that yet. In our final moments, are we dying? No, I just never know how to conclude the streams. My review of the presentation. Emperor got a 10. Yay! Thank you! This was fun. Yay! Thank you! I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. Then, SARMY, it's been an honor spending time with you today, but unfortunately this fish has to go rehydrate, so it's time I bid you adieu. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more from me, not as sashimi, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye-bye!